And this is Ken Kreitzer for Talking Business. We're in New York City today in Riverdale at Manhattan College. I have a chance to speak with the Assistant Dean of the Engineering Program here at Manhattan, and that is Richard Schneider. Professor, great to see you.
Great to see you.
Great to visit Manhattan. And maybe you can start, tell us a little bit about your career in engineering. You graduated Manhattan, you worked in industry before going to the academic side. Maybe tell us a little bit about some of the steps on your career.
Sure. I graduated as a civil engineer with a specialty in structures, and I started working in my early career designing structures for large industrial plants. Did a lot of coal handling facilities for American Electric Power, did a lot of mine facilities in copper mines in Arizona, iron mines up in Michigan. So that's how my career got started. I got an MBA at some point in time, and I was managing people, and I also got a second master's in computer information systems.
That seems to be a common occurrence for people in engineering to have their engineering degrees, but then also to get an MBA, which probably provides application. Why was that a good plus for you?
I was interested both in the technical engineering and the business part of it. So I felt that the MBA would help with both, and it certainly did. It helped my career tremendously. The last several years of my career, I was a fairly high-level manager at PSC&G.
Well, that's terrific. Now, Manhattan College is known for its engineering program. You have over 1,000 or close to 1,000 students in one of the engineering majors. Maybe tell us a little bit about the program options here at Manhattan.
Okay. We offer degrees in chemical engineering. We offer degrees in civil engineering, electrical, and computer engineering. They're part of the same department since the programs are fairly similar. And we also have mechanical engineering. And then under each of those four basic branches of engineering, there are different sub-branches. So for example, in chemical engineering, someone can go into petrochemical engineering, they can go into the food industry. We even have a major in, not a major, but an option in cosmetic engineering.
Okay, a lot of different options. Now, I'm someone who wish I had spent more time maybe in high school preparing for STEM education options. What are some of the requirements? How does someone know that they have got a good aptitude for being in one of the STEM majors, perhaps engineering?
Okay. Obviously, one needs to be pretty good at math and science. That's like a prerequisite. But what a lot of people don't realize is you also need to have good communication skills. So I often tell students that some of the non-technical classes, like the college writing class and some of the gen ed classes they take, are equally important because engineers don't have a great reputation for being able to communicate well, and if you can write well, your career will just take off.
Absolutely. Now, Manhattan, on your website, you mentioned how many important projects in the New York City area your graduates are involved in. You had many on the Tappan Zee Bridge project, which is a beautiful bridge.
Yes,
I enjoy driving over
beautiful.
it. Tell us a little bit about some of the projects and opportunities your graduates have gone on to.
Okay. Basically, Manhattan is known as the school that built New York City. Our graduates have been involved in many, many projects, almost all of them. For example, after the World Trade Center catastrophe, when we started the cleanup effort, there was an author who wrote a book about that project. And at one point, and this author was not a Manhattan College graduate, at one point he made the statement that there were so many Manhattan College engineers working on the project in various companies that it almost seemed like a school project. Wow. And then you mentioned the Tappan Zee Bridge replacement. There were 3 consortiums of companies bidding on that project. No matter which company won the bid, it would have been Manhattan College engineers who built the bridge.
Well, those are terrific projects that your graduates have worked on. Now, just thinking about one of those projects, they're so complicated. You have mechanical aspects, you have planning, you've got data. What are some of the things that you teach your students that are all parts of supporting a key project?
communication, communication, and more communication. I was just having this conversation with a student 2 days ago where there are far more errors made in large projects because of lack of communication or lack of effective communication than technical errors. So it's a very important part, and we stress that a lot in our education, from the first class they take called Intro to Engineering all the way up to the capstone design project. Much of the education is focused on getting students in front of the classroom, making presentations, so that when they reach the real world of work environment, that they're prepared for this. Because everybody kind of, the first time they get in front of an audience, you will have some difficulties. So we like to see our students have those difficulties here, where there's a safety net, and when they reach the real world, they've gotten through those difficulties and they're effective communicators.
Absolutely. So important to be able to describe your work and describe a project, perhaps to get sponsorship. Or we were just talking with one of your graduates yesterday about getting it through the city reviews, and being able to explain the project and coordinate so the city, municipality you're working with feels comfortable about the project. Tell us a little bit about, now you got a couple of different fields, civil engineering. Someone described that to me as something, projects that don't move, and mechanical is everything that does move.
True.
Tell us a little about what are the faster growing parts of engineering today if someone was trying to select which area to specialize in.
Okay. I always tell freshmen, especially when they're making that decision, choose what you love. Because if you choose something based on what's the hot marketing or what's the hot job field at the moment, things are cyclical. It could change after 4 years. So you really should pick something you love. The other thing I would say is mechanical engineering is growing probably the fastest. And that's not just at Manhattan College, that's a national trend. Mainly because of the biomechanical engineering and an emphasis on manufacturing and trying to manufacture things economically and cleanly, i.e. environmentally clean.
Oh, so important. What are some of the application areas? And we all think about building buildings and bridges and roadways and such, and you mentioned the biology aspect to it, healthcare. What are some of the new fields that are using engineering concepts that might not have stood out years ago?
Transportation engineering has taken off quite a bit recently because we're dealing with building new projects, new things in highly densely populated areas, and it brings a whole new host of problems. So if you want to create let's say a small shopping mall at a major intersection, there's a whole complex series of decisions that have to be made. Do I need a left turn lane? How am I going to mark the intersection? What's the signage going to be? And it's so much more complicated now because it's a densely populated area. And again, just like you were saying, the town might say, yes, we do need a left turn signal, and the developer needs to pay for it because without the development, we don't need it. The developer is going to hire transportation engineers, and they're going to try to prove that they don't need it. Both will make presentations to the town fathers, and it's going to depend a lot on how well that concept is communicated to the town council, and they're going to make a decision based on that.
Absolutely. Now, you mentioned working with the freshmen as an academic advisor, and you also support the student veterans here at Manhattan. Right. What are some of the key aspects you work with the students on? I'm sure time management is one of them, and developing focus in their studies. What are some of the key things to be successful when you start out in something difficult like engineering?
Well, first of all, you have to love what you're doing. So I stress to students that they need to pick the part of engineering that they absolutely love. The other thing, starting from orientation and working through the first semester, is making sure that students understand it's not high school. It's a very different environment, and what made students successful in high school won't necessarily work in college. And I spend a great deal of time explaining that to them. a lot on time management, and a lot on how to study, because in college, and it's not just engineering, it's all majors in college, you really have to remember what you learned from year to year. So a lot of high school students have learned to succeed by cramming, and that may work at the high school level, but at the college level, you really need to have a totally different study ethic, again, mostly with time management, going back to things over and over again, so that you retain that information, because what you learn in freshman year in physics, you're going to need in sophomore year in statics, you're going to need in junior year in structures classes. So it's a matter of learning for the long term, which is something not all our incoming students have, and we try to put that instill that into them.
Wow, so important. Professor, maybe just sum up, what's the best thing about why someone should consider an engineering program at Manhattan College?
Engineering is a wonderful education to have, because more than the major we pick, we learn how to solve problems. And people in all walks of life need people to solve problems. And engineers get excited about that, and we like to solve problems. I think there's a statistic that says that 10 years after graduation, half of the people with an engineering degree are not doing engineering anymore. Not because they didn't enjoy it, not because there aren't jobs, but because other areas seduced them into those other areas.
Sure.
Engineers go into law, they go into medicine. A lot of engineers lately have been working in the stock market, because the investments being made are in STEM type firms, and you really need a technically educated person to help evaluate what's happening within the company.
And Professor Richard Schneider from the engineering program here at Manhattan College, great to visit, great to hear your insight in a very important field of education. Great to visit today.
It was a pleasure chatting with you. Take care.
Absolutely. This is Ken Kreitzer for CBSI Talking Business at Manhattan College in Riverdale, New York.